وين جمال؟
الدار.
شو بيعمل؟
نعم
بيتبرد عندك في الدار.
انت بتحضر نفسك.
I mean, Car, you can just give the speaker the co-host and you can mute the participant. So, because every time will be someone interrupting. So,
والغضب نحن أمل الأجيال منها ومن عنا انكتب تاريخ الأبطال. نحن الثورة والغضب نحن أمل الأجيال منها ومن عنا انكتب تاريخ الأبطال. فجر اللي طالع نحن والسيف القاطع نحن. فجر اللي طالع نحن والسيف القاطع نحن. قلوب الناس انطرحنا نحن فرح الأطفال. منها ومن عنا انكتب تاريخ الأبطال. رح ننسى الأيام الصعبة والناس المنسين. كنا طول سنين الغربي بوطننا منفين. رح ننسى الأيام الصعبة يا هالناس المنسين. كنا طول سنين الغربي بوطننا منفين. شوفي يا هالحرية دموع الفرح المنسي. شوفي يا هالحرية دموع الفرح المنسي. غالي علينا وعلينا نصر اللي طال. الثورة والغضب نحن أمل الأجيال منها ومن عنا انكتب تاريخ الأبطال. فجر اللي طالع نحن والسيف القاطع نحن. فجر اللي طالع نحن والسيف القاطع نحن. قلوب الناس انطرحنا نحن فرح الأطفال. منها ومن عنا انكتب تاريخ الأبطال.
Well, welcome, marhaba, bienvenidos, bem-vindos. My name is Tings Chak. I'm the coordinator of the Culture Department of Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, which forms part of the International People's Assembly, and I'll be your host for today. Before I begin, I want to remind everyone that we have simultaneous interpretation available in English, Arabic, Spanish, and Portuguese. So for those of you who are joining in our Zoom right now, you can click on that little icon, which is a globe at the very bottom. And you can choose your interpretation language there. And for those of you who are joining from the live stream, well, you already found your languages, hopefully. And also, I want to remind anyone on the webinar to turn off your mics, but please do turn on your cameras because it helps give us a sense of the people that we're discussing with. I can see through the names we have people joining from across Africa, Latin America, the Arab world, Asia, and Europe, and North America. So it's very exciting to be able to see all of your faces as we share the next just under 2 hours together. So today's event is co-hosted by the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, the International People's Assembly, as well as its Internationalist Collective of Political Education, and the Utopics Collective. And it's being broadcast by our various media partners in Arabic by Madar, Brasil de Fato in Portuguese, Alba Movimentos in Spanish, and in English through the Tricontinental site. Again, my name is Tings, and the song that we just opened with is named We Are the Revolution and the Rage by Julia Boutros, who's one of the most prominent Arab musicians to have dedicated her voice and her song to resistance and to dignity and freedom. And we want to start today's session with that message. Of course, today's event is a launch of our latest dossier from the Tricontinental entitled Despite Everything, Cultural Resistance for a Free Palestine, which I had the privilege of writing in conversation with many artists and thinkers and activists and militants from Palestine on how culture has been used since the Nakba to respond to the different political conjunctures till today as the genocide we've been seeing under our eyes. And it was also released in time for yesterday, which is the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. And of course, the day marks an important moment in 1947 when the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Resolution 181, which led to the Nakba, the catastrophe of 1948, the ethnic cleansing that seized 70% of Palestinian land, destroyed more than 500 towns and villages, and displaced around 800,000 Palestinians from their homeland to create what we call the State of Israel today. And it's also important to note that the Nakba was also a period of profound cultural destruction, from the outright looting and theft to the 80 years of cultural destruction and ethnic cleansing that have followed. And we have seen this repeat itself, of course, since October 7th, when we have witnessed the genocide live stream for the world to see, and the systematic targeting of cultural centers, universities, libraries, archives, media offices, and cultural workers themselves. Many of Palestine's painters, poets, writers, sculptors, filmmakers, and musicians are among the dead, are among the martyred. And this is also why I think when we look back to, novelists and revolutionaries such as Rasan Abu Apara, who was a member of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, he understood that you need to study the enemy, including its cultural production. He studied Zionist literature, including, of course, the architect of Zionism, Theodor Herzl, to understand that political Zionism required a cultural counterpart. And if Zionism wages war on a cultural front, then Palestinian liberation must also be defended on a cultural front, which is something we've learned across liberation struggles of the Third World, from Africa, Latin America, Asia, and across the Arab world. So now coming to today's event is launching of this dossier, which opens this conversation, which is an ongoing conversation. We thought it was necessary to bring Palestinian voices and artists to share with us, how do we think about cultural work? What can culture do in a time of genocide? And what is the role of artists, of cultural workers, not only Palestinians, but around the world, to be linked with cultural struggles today in the fight for Palestinian liberation? And I'll close my opening statements here because we will have three Palestinian artists to share their perspectives across different areas of cultural work, from literature to cinema to visual arts. And I'll first introduce our first speaker, and then each will have about 15 to 20 minutes. And then we'll open up for question and answer with all of you here today. So without further ado, I'm going to invite our first speaker, which is Bassem Khandaqji, who is one of Palestine's most significant cultural voices, shaping literary resistance. He's also a Politburo member of the Palestinian People's Party. He was arrested in 2004 and sentenced to 3 life sentences, and spent 22 years facing solitary confinement, interrogation, repression, and was just released last month along nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, political prisoners, in an exchange, and was subsequently deported to Egypt, where he is joining us from. But in prison, he continued, despite the hard conditions, to produce literature, to produce essays, including one of many novels he wrote, which is called A Mask, The Color of the Sky, which won the 2024 International Prize for Arabic Fiction. And we're eagerly awaiting this novel's English translation, which should be coming up in the next year. And he'll be sharing with us a little bit about what he's been elaborating on this idea of confrontation literature, which is something that he's been studying, thinking, theorizing, and through his practice. So with that, I'm going to pass the word to Bassem. You have about 20 minutes. Thank you very much.
شكرا ويسعد نهاركم جميعا وتحياتي لكل الرفاق والرفيقات ولكل المتضامنات والمتضامنين مع شعبنا الفلسطيني في كل أنحاء العالم. أنا سعيد وفخور إني أكون معكم اليوم في هذا اللقاء الافتراضي بعد 22 عام من السجن وبعد 22 عام من الغربة الحديدية داخل سجون الاستعمار الصهيوني. وسعيد جدا اني موجود كمان مع حبيبنا وكبيرنا الفنان الكبير والمخرج الكبير محمد بكري اللي
الحمد لله على
كانت
السلامة
افلامه، الله يسلمك، حيك ابو صالح،
حبيبي.
اللي كانت افلامه وكانت يعني برامجه تخفف من عبء الغربة الحديدية علينا في المعتقل رغم انف الاستعمار ورغم انف العزلة اللي كان بيحاول يفرضها علينا. انا اليوم حابب اشارككم في مفهوم أدب الاشتباك كجزء من الجبهة الثقافية الشاملة ضد المستعمر الصهيوني، ولكن ضد المستعمر الصهيوني في هذه المرة كمنظومة معرفية وكمنظومة ثقافية لطالما سعى من خلالها إلى إقصاء شعبنا الفلسطيني وإلى نزع ملامحه وتفكيك ملامحه الإنسانية. نحن منذ نكبة عام 48 الكولونيالية ونحن نعيش كشعب فلسطيني حالة من الإقصاء وحالة من محو الإنسانية وحالة أيضا من إقصائنا عن السردية الإنسانية وسردية الضحية. وإذا احنا بنرجع للتاريخ شوي راح نكتشف إنه هاي الحركة الصهيونية بمجملها هي قامت على عدة مفاهيم وعدة مضامين، من أهمها السردية الفكرية والسردية الثقافية والسردية الاجتماعية والاقتصادية، وقامت على مجموعة من الأفكار، وهذه الأفكار هي أفكار عنصرية وأفكار إقصائية
that were based on exclusion and occupation perspectives, and that enshrine the equation of 1 + 1 = 2. And if you're not a 2, then you will be exiled and you will be excluded. And from here comes the concept of the engagement literature, which is a bit different from the resistance literature. The resistance literature came from Rasan Khandaqji, God bless his soul, when he dubbed all the poets of the occupied lands of Palestine since 48, the poets that were there, and the engagement literature, which is based on the resistance literature, starts from the following question: how can we write an anti-colonial literature from within a colonial context? How can we destroy the colonial equation that is based on a dominant colonial entity or individual that is hegemonizing and dominating an occupied individual? And here, this aspect, I believe that there is a microphone open. Sorry. All right. The cultural resistance at this level is manifested by adopting different narratives and by relying on re-establishing the human side of Palestinians. It is based on a number of levels. These include the level of transferring the Arab reader believing in the Palestinian people's cause to the depth of this Zionist intellect, this mindset, to allow them to see it as it is, and also to destroy the stereotype that existed on the Zionist within the different artistic, cultural manifestation. This is why we need to deal with the Zionist not only as the killer soldier or the vampire that it is sucking the blood of Palestinians. This stereotype of a monster that is included in the Arab literature will make us shackled in fighting them or resisting against them. This process also does not entail naturalizing of those Zionists. No. We want to transfer the Palestinians, to transfer the Arab readers into the depth of this whole mindset and structure of Zionists, how a Zionist have moved from a person into a fascist soldier who is killing Palestinians in the West Bank and committing a genocide in Gaza. This means that we need to engage in all of the aspects of this culture. Therefore, if we destroy this stereotypical image of a Zionist within the Palestinian literature, this compels us to go in a forefront confrontation with them. The Palestinian representation within the Palestinian literature is a silent representation. Palestinians do not have a voice also in the Zionist literature with its pioneers Arsaouz and a number of other novelists who depict Palestinians as the terrorist, blood-sucking savages who are attacking Zionists. And this is the Zionist perspective towards the Palestinians, Arabs in general. And this is why we want to launch this engagement literature in a new way, so that we engage against the Zionists and vanquish them ethically and morally. What is requested from us today is to beat this Zionist ethically. And in this engagement literature, we're trying to develop a new cultural and literary position that dares to create new knowledge and culture, that it is not based on Western standards that exist and that are closely related to the colonial occupation perspectives. This is on the first level. The second level is the universality. We're talking about a universal literature that it is open to all the world. It is not closed on itself in a chauvinist mindset. No. As Palestinians, we should not fall in the trap of fascism or mimicking the ethics of our of the Zionists. We are trying to expose the injuries that Palestinians have succumbed and to allow the whole world to see them as they are. The third level is related to the feminist dimension. We want to develop the feminist dimension heavily in the engagement literature. This literature should be linked to the agonies and sufferings of women within this occupation Zionist structure. This patriarchal structure that targets not only women, but everyone in Palestine. Also, I would like to shed light on the experience of writing within prisons and within imprisonment. And to answer the question, how do we write? To whom should we write? And these are the main questions that we faced in our imprisonment. At the first moment that a Palestinian prisoner decides to write within the prison, he's no longer a prisoner. He is also persecuted. And here, whatever you write or whatever you say becomes a source of persecution for you. And once we start writing, we start our resistance also against the persons who imprisoned us. And here I'm talking about the whole system, the judge, the soldiers, the Zionist police, and so on and so forth. And here, the relationship becomes a relationship of confrontation. And this is how, when we write, we are in confrontation with the whole Zionist culture. When the prisoner starts writing, they're trying to reclaim their humanity. The occupants and the Zionist forces are trying to erase any Palestinian identity features. And one of these, the methods that they use in order to erase these features is to just call us by a number and not by a name, which is the epitome of exclusion. This is why, in my imprisonment, I tried to start writing not only to convey these feelings and these ideas to prisoners, but also outside of the prisons. And we were successful in multiple times in leaking these words outside of the prison, and this came at a high cost for us. I found out during my imprisonment that this narrative hurts the occupant. The Zionist occupation forces are very afraid of Palestinian writers. When they started punishing us, when they found out that we had pieces of paper and pens and that we've leaked what we've wrote outside of the prison, and we have been beaten and targeted because I wrote, and they destroyed multiple times my glasses. And I found out that when I'm writing in the prison, I was like Shahrazad in 1001 Night. Shahrazad continued speaking in order not to die. The Palestinians in prisons also wrote in order to continue existing, and it is a result of an existential act that allowed us to revolt against the persecution that we faced in the prison. And this is how we've transformed the prison into a cultural setting that allow us to explore the whole world, because we're writing within the prison in order to share with the world. We start from that small place to embody the sufferance of our people, to share this with the world, to feel that we are part of humanity. And personally speaking, I didn't write the prisoner or al-mu'taqal when I was in prison. I decided not to do that because I didn't want to be influenced with only one side to the whole narrative. This is why also in Palestine now, this concept is being adopted by many writers and novelists, and they are searching for a new cultural, cinematographic, artistic narrative that is based on the ethical legitimacy of the Palestinian people, that is a people worth living, that have the right to live. And this is what the Zionist movement is, cultural movement is trying to undermine. Many people confuse occupation and colonization. What is happening in Palestine is not only occupation, it is colonization. It is a full-fledged colonization that is based on the continuous pursuit of exterminating all Palestinians. And this is what we're trying to showcase. this colonial mindset that it is trying to eliminate all Palestinians. We shouldn't view the Zionist forces as occupation forces only, because this will not enable us to dismantle the colonial equation that is being embodied through the Zionist colonization of Palestine. At the end, I would like to say that this webinar is an opportunity for us to develop further such a concept. I want briefly also to speak about the experience of the great Mohammed Bakri, and we've heard about it when we were in prison. He is one of the confrontational filmmakers. Through his film Jenin Jenin, he confronted the Zionist forces. This is why he was oppressed, and he was targeted, and he was excluded from this drama Palestinian project. And from his work, we see that there is a commitment to engage in this pursuit of process of showcasing what is happening on the Palestinian end. I would like to thank you at the end for providing me with this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bassem, for those really powerful words. And also, I think it's a call for us, to understand that the literature, as part of all culture, has to move beyond this representation of silence towards this confrontation. I think that's a very beautiful way to do it, to express it. So thank you for that. And I think we can elaborate more on this in the question and answer. I'm going to introduce, you already helped me introduce a little bit of our next speaker, who is Mohammed Bakri, which I think many of you will have heard about. He is a prominent Palestinian actor and director. He was born in the village of Bana in the Galilee, which is the occupied Palestinian territories of 1948, and makes him part of this Palestinian minority that is living in what we call Israel today, the descendants of approximately 159,000 Palestinians who remained in their homeland and who were not expelled during the 1948 Nakba. Mohammed is a leading, he's in many films in a 50-year career, and has been responsible for helping carry the Palestinian struggle to international stages and international cinema. In a way, we can see his whole artistic career has been inseparable from this political commitment. It's a confrontation in practice. Of course, his documentary films, the landmark film Jenin Jenin from 2002, documenting the destruction of the Jenin refugee camp, became a foundational work of this confrontation cinema, if we can call it that, using Bassem's words. And for it, Bakri has endured nearly 2 decades of legal and political persecution by Israeli authorities. Even still, his career stands as a real challenge to the colonial narratives and an affirmation of artistic confrontation and defiance. So please, Mohammed, you have the word.
شكرا شكرا.
Thank you very
أولا
much.
أود أن أبارك
First of all,
لأخي
I would like
المحرر
to congratulate my brother, the freed
خندقجي
prisoner Bassem Khandaqji.
واحد.
And his last name means in English trench, and we are within the same trench.
وعنك
It's
بتأثر كثير.
great to hear from you, and I get really influenced whenever I hear you speaking.
بدي أبدأ من
I would like to start
تفضل فيه أخوي
from where my brother Bassem
المقاومة
ended.
اللي سماه الله يرحمه
The
حسين
resistance
كنفاني بأدب
literature
المقاومة.
as coined by
هو كان
Rasan Abu with the
مناراتي
resistance poetry
كنت سفينة ضائعة
was a beacon for me when I was like a lost ship within an ocean of questions, inquiries, where I was asking myself, who am I? Where would I like to be? What are my dreams? What hurts me? What makes me happy? When I was a child in El Ma'ani, a village in Galilee next to Akka, I was born to see the hideous Zionist entity. I was born in a place where I am rejected, a place where most of its people was displayed and evicted. Only 155,000 remained there. I am one of those. Not me, but my father at that time. I was brought up in a place where the Zionist entity erased anything that reminds people of Palestine. The nature, the village, the city, the language, even the chickpeas or hummus and falafel, everything was expunged. I lived throughout my childhood under a military ruling up to my 12 years of age. I haven't read anything about Palestine. I didn't know anything about Palestine at that time. My father, who was a first-hand witness to a massacre in Ma'ni and Deir Asad villages, where I was brought up, did not talk about that. He was he didn't share that with us. My grandfather, who died defending Akka in 48, was unknown to me. Maybe this silence was out of my father's fear to grow up and adopt a particular political line. Maybe that's why he didn't say anything. He was afraid. For me, he always told me, be careful, redundantly and repeatedly. He was saying that until I hate that word, be careful. When I became a bit older and started reading, I read first the writings of Rasan Kanafani. I was fond of him, all short stories, essays, everything he wrote, I read. And I had the opportunity of meeting with his son in 89 or 99, and had the opportunity to see young Rasan Kanafani. When I started reading the writings of Rasan Kanafani, I felt that I am part of a people. The people who Rasan Kanafani talked about in his writings who were living in a camp, they were similar to me. They ate like or the same meals that I ate, and wore the same clothes that I wore. So that's my beginning with Rasan Kanafani, then Emil Habibi and Darwish. Rasan Kanafani was talking about the refugees camp, Palestinians in Lebanon, and before that in Kuwait. Emil Habibi stayed in Haifa. Mahmoud Darwish also stayed in Haifa, but migrated in the 70s from Haifa. And many others, Samih al-Qasim, Salman Natur, Jabra Ibrahim Jabra, all of the Palestinian writers and intellect who wrote and whose favorite and whose favors were bestowed upon me because of their writings. So this is
والنصف الثاني أدب المقاومة في الداخل.
what shaped my identity. The first half was from Rasan Kanafani, and the other half was from Emil Habibi and Mahmoud Darwish. And
مرقها شعبي منذ 48
by being a witness of the different events that happened to the Palestinian people in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, 82, then Sabra and Shatila massacre. After that, to the
أكثر شيء يعني كان واضح الاحتلال في 67 لما احتلوا
and especially in 67 when the occupation forces occupied Al-Quds, the West Bank, Golan Heights.
نوع من الانفتاح.
I started then opening up, and maybe this is for the better, not for the worse. I started opening up and maybe confront or engage in a positive manner with Sheikh Yassin al-Bakri, who is one of my relatives and who I met in 68 in Al-Quds. And then when he came to visit us, he brought the family tree with him, and the family al-Bakri was very big family that existed in Al-Quds and in Egypt and Syria, and the line goes up until we reach the first Khalifa Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. So, and we are a descendant of that family, as I learned then. At 67, when I was a young teenager, I started learning many things through reading those books, but also started learning from first-hand practices, like studying in Israeli schools and then studying in a Hebrew university. And at that time, I discovered something, that the Zionist entity denies to mention anything related to Palestine. I'm talking about culture, civilization, or history. Emil Habibi said it to me once. When I asked him, Abu Salam, why did you write Al-Mutasha'il, which is the optimist-pessimist mixture? And I made it a play later on. So I asked him, why did you write that book? He laughed and told me, I was in the Knesset, comrade, and I was a representative of the Communist Party in the Knesset. And at that time, I heard Yael Alon, the Minister of Culture, telling Golda Meir, that was the Prime Minister at that time, the Minister of Culture was telling the Prime Minister, who are these Palestinians? If there is a Palestinian people, they would have left a Palestinian literature legacy. Where is the Palestinian literature? He forgot at that time that by order of Golda Meir, Rasan Kanafani was assassinated in Beirut. So he forgot at that time. Emil told me then, when I heard that sentence coming from Yael, I decided to write a novel that will live on even after Yael Galon or even after Israel itself. The daily practices and the experiences that I underwent when I was living within the Zionist entity, I faced a challenge. I wanted to, in spite of that setting, say my own story. And I cannot say my story if I don't talk about my people. My story should be told by me, cannot be assimilated by any entity, and especially the Zionist entity that has lit in fire my story. It burned the rocks, the trees, and forbid us from learning our own language. When we were learning language, we were learning Hebrew, and mainly, and as a young person, an actor that started my early youth as an actor, through my personal experience and practice, I learned that I can be the only one who can tell my own story. And this is why in 1987, even before Jenin, Costa Gavras came to our country intending to make a film called Hanake that talks about the right of return for Palestinians, which was the foundation and want to say that this is one of the pillars for any peace that can that Palestine can see in the future, which is the right to return. And Israel started attacking that film because it talked about that concept even before it was produced. I was in the cinema in Tel Aviv. I wanted to go to see the movie with my wife, my children, and my cousin. We were 5 people in the cinema. Only 5 persons attended the streaming of Hanake that talked about the right of return. And Costa Gavras was a great director, had made lots of great movies, but he was a whole campaign against him was launched in France and Britain, in the UK, and in many countries. So because he was talking about the rights of Palestinians, and that is why he was dubbed as anti-Semitic, as many were dubbed because they talked about the rights of Palestinians. And then I realized that I have a human and cultural duty to speak about the story of Palestinians, my story, without any slogans, without demonizing the other. On the contrary, there is a quote saying, humanize your enemy, because when you say your story, you can give the world both stories and then let them decide. I don't know if I still have time or not. There are many things that I want to share with you, millions of things, but of course I do not want to monopolize the speech. So maybe I will stop here and give the floor to the third speaker, and later we can have the opportunity to speak more or answer any specific questions that I haven't talked about during this humble intervention. This is what I wanted to share with you. Just to say, we're not numbers. The Palestinian people are not numbers. The children that died in Gaza are not mere numbers. The prisoners of freedom are not numbers. They are persons. They have names. They have families. And like Bassem said, the soldier that is bombarding children has a family, has a father, a mother, a sister, or a brother. So this is the theory that I adopt. The most important thing that was created by God in this earth is the human being, and we have to treat the human beings as if they are a continuity of God's will in earth. And having said that, what justifies killing a child? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, for that very powerful intervention. And I hope you get to share some of more of these stories in the question and answer. But I think it was a very powerful testament to remind us about the importance of not only culture, but of storytelling, of telling those stories to resist this idea of being reduced to numbers, this dehumanization, this erasure of, the names of villages, as you mentioned, or even the literature, or even the whole historical record of the Palestinian people. So this is the essential critical role of culture it has to play. So I'm going to introduce our third and final speaker before we open up to question and answer. Rasan Abu Apara, also known as David Jacob Carmona, is a Chilean Palestinian graphic designer, photographer, muralist, activist, whose work is deeply rooted in the Palestinian heritage as well as the Latin American struggle. He carries the surname of his Palestinian grandparents who migrated to Chile, and Chile is the country with the largest Palestinian community outside of the Arab world. And at the age of 15, he joined the communist youth and later the Brigada Ramon Apara, which is a legendary Chilean muralism and street art collective, back in the 60s, and supported actively Salvador Allende's popular unity government. And he has, in the recent years, played an important role in the 2019 uprising through photography and posters, is also part of Feria Contrabando, as well as Utopics Community, which is co-hosting this event today. They have been very active in organizing Palestinian solidarity exhibitions across Latin America, and we were hoping he could also bring to us this internationalist vision to connect the Palestinian liberation with other struggles across the global south and the world. So thank you very much. Go ahead. I think it's still muted. Are you able to press the unmute button, comrade? Maybe some technical difficulties to unmute. I guess we can't do it on our side, right, Emil?
Hola, muy buenos días.
Oh,
Ahora sí.
perfect.
Okay.
Hello,
Em,
good
quiero
morning.
saludar
I would like to greet
a toda la comunidad
the
que
whole
resiste y persiste, sobre todo,
community that
que
resists
persiste
and
en la lucha
persists
por
in the
Palestina.
struggle for Palestine.
Quiero saludar
I would like to
a
greet
camaradas, al
our
compañero
comrades,
Mohamed.
our comrade
Quiero
Mohammed.
saludar
I would like to greet
al compañero Bassem en
our
su
comrade
lucha.
Bassem
Quiero
in the
saludar a
struggle. I would
cada
like to
uno
greet
y a cada
each
una
and
en su rincón de
everyone
lucha.
from their struggle.
Esto es súper importante
It's really important
para a todas y todos el reunirnos
to all to
en
get
encontrarnos
together and tell each other
saber
and
que
get to know
estamos, como lo hicimos, por el camino
that,
correcto.
as we say, going the good path.
Y, como le digo, los saludos desde mi
So I greet
rincón,
you
desde mi hogar,
from my corner, from my
desde lo que se
home,
llama Chile,
from a place called
la
Chile,
región que se
a
llama
region called
Coquimbo, la región de Gabriela
Coquimbo,
Mistral.
the region of
Para
Gabriela
nosotros,
Mistral.
Gabriela Mistral es súper
And for us,
importante
Gabriela Mistral is
en
very
muchas
important
luchas.
in many struggles.
Quisiera compartir
I
primero,
would like
antes
to
que
share first,
presentarme, que me conozcan tal vez,
before introducing myself,
Mohammed Bakri, Bassem
Mohammed
Khandaqji, no me conocen mucho.
Bassem don't know me
Soy
very well, so
soy un conspirador
I'm
y un militante de la lucha palestina.
pioneer and an activist of
Si yo
the
no he vivido
Palestine struggle. I did
lo
not live
que la pésima, las luchas que
this
que
terrible
tuvieron Mohamed, Bassem,
struggle of
y lo
Mohammed
atravesamos acá.
Bassem
Acá en Chile,
here in
como saben,
Chile. As you
es la
know,
comunidad más grande que
they
tenemos
have the
árabe
biggest
dentro de lo que fue la
Arabic
diáspora. Yo fui
community
hijo
in
de
the
esa
diaspora. I'm a child of the
Entonces,
diaspora.
la lucha que levantamos, que
So the
implantamos,
struggle we
lo
raise, we
hacemos
have here, we
más
do it
que del vivir ahí, no lo sentimos.
from
O
beyond.
sea,
We do not live there. We
pero
do
lo
have not
sentimos porque
experienced it
somos humanos.
ourselves, but we
Y
feel
como
it because
humanos
we're
nos
humans,
manifestamos.
and as humans we manifest.
Y cada día
And each day
pensamos,
we
luchamos
think, we
en
fight
el pueblo palestino.
for the
Súper
Palestinian
difícil
people. It's very
hablarle
hard
desde mi rincón, desde mi
here from
comunidad, en realidad,
my home, from my community,
sabiendo que hay compañeros que están en la
knowing
cárcel,
that there are comrades
hay
in jail,
padres, madres sin
there
hijos,
are fathers,
pero
mothers,
no
and
quiero hablar desde
children.
el dolor.
But I don't
Quiero
want to
hablar desde
speak
una
from pain.
dignificación
I want to
propia de donde yo vengo.
speak about the resignification of my own, from
Simple, yo
where I
me
come
llamo
from.
David Jacob,
So I
un
call
nombre
myself
súper
David Jacob,
judío,
which is a Jewish
pero
name,
mi nombre original, mi apellido
but
original
my
es Abu
original
Apara,
name
y
is
eso es
Abu
lo que yo
Apara.
reivindico, esa es mi
And
lucha,
that's
reivindicar
my struggle to
el pasado, la
signify the
narrativa que
past,
nos han querido
the
borrar
narrative
nuestra
that they
historia.
tried to
Y
erase
en
our
tal,
history.
y tal también quiero saludar al
And I would
Instituto
also like to
Tricontinental,
greet
porque hace posible
the, the Tricontinental
ejercicio de
Institute
memoria
that
que
does
nos
this
podemos
exercise of
encontrar.
memory that we can tell each other.
Y antes que
And
contarles
before
tal vez quién soy o lo que hago,
telling who am I and what do I do,
quisiera
I would
decir
like
algo,
to
algo que escribí
say
hace un tiempo atrás.
something about what I
Es una
wrote
canción de Silvio Rodríguez que se llama
about a
Jesse
song from
Flores,
Silvio
se
Rodriguez
llama,
that is
en
called
realidad no tiene un nombre, pero parte diciendo
with
imagina.
Imagine.
Yo ya no imagino,
I
solo
don't
soy
imagine
la
anymore.
mirada, el miedo, el dolor de los niños sin
The
familia,
pain of the
de madres
children
sin hijos,
without
de
family, the
padres
mothers
torturados, el
without
estómago
children,
vacío de humanidad.
fathers
Los
tortured, the
ojos de un
empty
niño
stomachs
guardan el
of
dolor
the
de su edad,
humanity,
el
the
polvo, los
eyes, the
escombros,
powder, the
los escombros de humanidad,
troubles
los
of
muertos, el
humanity,
frío,
the
la
dead,
sed, el hambre,
the
el
cold,
pan,
the
el colonialismo
hunger,
sionista,
the bread, the
sueños rotos,
Zionist
sueños con cicatrices,
colonialism,
lágrimas de sangre,
dreams
negras
broken,
del nombre de Dios,
black
lágrimas del
blood,
nombre de Dios que no existe para nosotros.
from
Pero
gods
los
that do not
pobres
exist for
están
us.
ahí y los
But the
pobres están
poor are
ahí
there, and the
exigiendo una
poor
tierra.
are there demanding a
En
land.
Gaza, las infancias,
In Gaza,
sonrisas
the
rotas, de niños buscando
childhood
su
are
infancia,
ruptured.
son gritos de dolor.
The children seeking their childhoods
Tal
are
vez lo
cries of
que
pain.
escribimos,
So
yo
what
no lo
we
escribo
wrote,
desde la cárcel,
I
no
did
lo
not
escribo
write from the prison.
desde
I
un
write it
pero lo escribimos desde una experiencia
from an experience,
dolorosa, que es una experiencia
a
fascista,
painful fascist
una
experience,
experiencia que se llama Pinochet,
an experience called
que nos
Pinochet,
instaló un modelo
which
económico, nos
installed
instaló
an
una
economic
cultura, una
model, a
narrativa,
culture, a
una
narrative
narrativa que nos
that
dice
tells us
que los pobres no tienen
that the
padres,
poor do
que
not
los
have
pobres, la gente, los
parents.
palestinos son
The poor, the
gente,
Palestine,
no son
Palestinians,
humanos, son monstruos.
they're not human, they are
Entonces,
monsters.
en esta larga lucha, en estos
So in
días,
this long struggle
desde el año 2000
since
que hemos
2000,
venido,
where we came,
no quiero hablar de mí, hemos venido
speaking
construyendo
about
una
myself, I have been
narrativa de
concluding
resistencia
a
gráfica
narrative of
en
resistance
Chile.
here in Chile.
La resistencia gráfica o
The
cultural,
graphic
acá
resistance,
lo
cultural
llevamos
resistance,
a todos lados.
we
Lo
bring, we take it
llevamos,
everywhere.
bueno, en este momento yo he visto una camiseta que se llama,
At this moment, I am wearing a T-shirt that's it's called the
que lo llevamos en el deporte,
Palestinian
por
Club,
ejemplo,
and we take it to the
con
sports, for
orgullo
example,
diseño gráfico, pero existe
with
una
my
resistencia que es
design.
bien importante,
But it's a resistance that is really
la
important.
resistencia del deporte. Es
The
como
resistance in
el deporte
sports.
nos puede
The
construir
sports
y
can build
dar
us
curso una narrativa que
a
vaya en contra
narrative
del imperio,
that goes
contra el
against
sionismo.
empire, against Zionism,
Y eso nos ha permitido
and that allows us
en estas largas madrugadas
in this
terroríficas
long
construir
terror night to
esperanza,
conclude, to have hope, to build hope,
anhelos, construir
to build
resistencia y
dreams, to
hacernos
build
internacionalistas. Hoy en
resistance,
día,
make ourselves
acá en
internationalists.
este territorio semiárido
So
llamado Chile,
there's territory called Chile, from the territory
estamos
called
viviendo
Chile.
el peor,
We have
el
been
peor
experiencing the
escenario
worst
de
scenario
nuestra historia
in our history
es poder tener, o sea, es el
of
tener
having
un gobierno sionista, un
a
gobierno fascista
Zionist,
de
fascist
un país que no lo
government.
quiero nombrar, pero lo voy a nombrar solamente una vez.
In
Se
the
llama
one,
CAS.
no, I don't want
CAS
to name it, but just once, a CAS. The
significa
CAS means
apoyar
to
a
support
estos gobiernos neoliberales,
this
estos gobiernos
neoliberal
fascistas,
government, a
que no los
fascist
queremos en
Zionist
Latinoamérica.
government. And we don't want it
Sabemos
here in
cuál es
Latin
el peligro.
America. We know the danger
Significa
that
tenerlo
means
acá, en
to
Chile.
have here
Ya lo
in
tenemos en
Chile.
Argentina.
We already have something like that in Argentina.
Entonces, ¿qué es lo
So
que hacemos?
what do
Lo
we
voy a hablar.
do
¿Qué es lo que hacemos? Es resistir, levantar nuestra
is
cultura.
resist, raise our
Yo
culture.
como chileno palestino,
Myself as a
desde
Chilean
muy
Palestinian,
chiquitito, mi papá, mi mamá,
from my
me hablaban
parents,
de nuestro
from a long
origen.
time, they spoke about our
A mí me
origin.
costaba mucho entenderlo
To
en
me, it
esos
took a
años,
long time to understand it
porque
along these
este es
years.
un país
Because this
neoliberal,
is a
un país
neoliberal
fascista.
country, a
Entonces,
fascist
era
country.
muy difícil.
So it was very difficult.
Pero a lo largo del internacionalismo,
But
de la
throughout the
música,
internationalism, the music, most of all, because of, thanks to music,
nos hemos permitido articular.
it allowed
Y
us
hoy en
to
día, en nuestro
mobilize.
territorio, en nuestro país,
And today, in our
una
territory, in our
narrativa,
country, we have this narrative
cultural resistente.
of
No soy el único.
resistance. I'm not the only
Chileno
one.
palestino. Hay gente del
There are
Guaymapu,
people
si les quiero
from
contar, el
Mapu.
Guaymapu son el
And
territorio
Mapu is the
mapuche.
territory, is the Mapuche
Y el
territory.
territorio mapuche lo defendemos, lo queremos, lo
The
afirmamos.
Mapuche territory,
¿Cuál es
we defend it, we love it.
lo que pensamos
What we think,
como miedo ante un Estado sionista? Porque un Estado sionista acá
vis-a-vis the
en
Zionist
el
states,
sur de
which
Latinoamérica significa
we
crear
fear
una
in
segunda
Latin America,
Palestina.
we have to create
En
a
el
second
sentido, por ejemplo,
Palestine,
que
the
van a
sense
hacer lo
of
mismo que hicieron con los
that they will do
hermanos
the
y hermanas palestinos
same they did with
en
our
Gaza y en
Palestinian
nuestro
brothers and
territorio.
sisters
Lo
in
van a hacer en
Gaza.
Chile, lo van a
They
hacer
will
en el
repeat that in
en el
Chile.
Guaymapu. Entonces,
So
de esa resistencia
from
nos
this
levantamos y hacemos
resistance,
resistencia.
we
Y en este
activate,
contexto llevamos años
we are militants and we
levantando nuestras
resist.
banderas,
It's been years
haciendo
since we
internacionalismo,
have
queriendo
our flags
entender
in the
sentir
air, and we want to
cómo
understand how
han sido las otras luchas en otros lugares.
the struggles have
Porque,
been in
por
different
ejemplo,
places around the world. Because, for
nosotros
example,
entendemos la
we
liberación de Palestina
understand
no
the
como un
Palestine
acto
liberation
único
not
en
as a
ese sector, sino lo entendemos como un acto
unique
internacional.
historical
Aspiramos a la liberación
phenomenon, but we think
de África.
internationally. We want to
No queremos más
Africa to be
colonialismo.
liberated. We don't want
Aspiramos
any more colonialism
para
around the world.
pero decolonizar
So to
Latinoamérica. Fueron todas las
decolonize
bases militares
Latin
en
America
Gringolandia.
and also
Hoy en día
the
esa narrativa
imperial
la encontramos
military
en
military movements like in the
en un
Caribbean right
peligro,
now. This narrative
porque en 50 años, 100 años,
is
los gringos
is
han
important because
instalado
in 50,
una
during 50
narrativa
years,
de que los
the
árabes
American imperialism has
nosotros
created a narrative
somos
that
terroristas.
Arabs, that we are
Cosa de
terrorists.
ver el cine gringo, ¿cachai? El
The
cine gringo, ¿qué nos dice?
American cinema,
Que
what does
somos
it say?
terroristas,
It says that we are
que
terrorists. They
somos, que no
depict
sabemos
us as
hablar, que
terrorists,
no
that we don't know
tenemos una cultura.
how to
Pero
speak,
no saben
we
que
don't
esa
have a
cultura se
culture,
traspasa.
but they don't
Yo
know
como
that
chileno
our
palestino
culture
me
is
traspasaron una cultura.
transferable.
Y
I, as
hubo
a
un dicho,
Palestinian Chilean,
no sé si
I
tal vez
defend
se da en Palestina, tal vez Mohammed
our
o Bassem
culture.
pueden decir lo contrario. Pero acá decimos que la
We say
sangre no
that
se hace agua. Entonces,
blood
como la
doesn't
sangre no
become
se hace
water.
agua,
With
acá
blood,
nosotros
we cannot
resistimos
make water.
desde todas
We resist
desde todos nuestros frentes de lucha.
in
Tenemos frentes de
every
lucha
field of
culturales,
struggle. We
tenemos
have
frentes de
a cultural
lucha
field of struggle.
deportivo,
We have a
pero lo
sports
importante siempre va a ser
struggle
dar
sphere
un
as well.
frente de lucha
But the most important
cultural, conversar con la
is
gente,
to
porque así
create
mismo el
a
fascismo
cultural
están en la televisión,
front of cultural
están
struggle. We have
transmitiendo
to speak
cómo
to the people because the fascism is
degüellan gente
comes on
y decimos
TV
esta gente es terrorista.
and they
Y esa es
depict
nuestra lucha, el persistir, el
the
luchar,
Arabs as terrorists. So we have to
el
persist
observar
and struggle.
acá, ¿qué es lo que hacemos nosotros, hermanas y hermanos? Nosotros
That's what we
sacamos
do with our
propaganda,
brothers and sisters.
nos preocupamos de salir a la
We
calle, de pegar una
we
afiche
are
cada cierto
concerned
tiempo,
to go into the
escribir
streets
algo, conversar con la gente,
to
porque el modelo
talk
neoliberal
to
nos
people
tiene
because
acá,
the
me tiene acá en
neoliberal
Chile, nos tiene atomizados.
model in
Fíjese que hay
Chile
gente que todavía piensa que la tierra es cuadrada.
and
Entonces,
in Latin America, there's
existe
people who are convinced that this this is a
un
good thing.
concepto de
There is
deshumanización.
a
Entonces,
concept of
esa deshumanización la combatimos
demonization
desde,
or
desde la
of
cultura. Hay gente
so
que
we share this
escribe, hay gente que
from
hace teatro,
our
hay
culture.
gente
There are
que
people who
hace
write,
deporte,
people
y dentro de
who
deporte también
are
quiere
playwrights and actors, and we
resaltar
have
el tema
sports.
de la cultura
So
y
sport
contar lo que
is
sucede en
also
Medio Oriente,
culture,
que lo que
and
sucede en Medio Oriente
we have
es
to
un
tell what's going on in the
genocidio
Middle East, which is a
y no es una
genocide.
guerra.
It's not a
Entonces,
war.
dentro de ese relato
So within this
gráfico,
narrative,
que no soy el único acá en Chile,
and I am not
nos
the only one in
levantamos.
Chile, we stand
Nuestra
up
bandera de lucha
and we
son,
have
son las gráficas.
our flags
Un grito,
after
un
which
grito,
we
un grito de las
it's,
paredes.
which are a symbol of
Y tal vez
struggle.
no lo escuchan, pero se ven.
We have a
Son
cry.
gritos de gol.
We yell.
Y
Maybe
dentro de
they
eso
don't
vamos construyendo.
listen to it, but
Eso es nuestra
sometimes we shout when
experiencia de
there's a
lucha, hermanas
goal.
y
This
hermanos.
is our experience
Eso
of
les puedo comentar por ahora.
struggle with our
Muchas
brothers
gracias
and sisters. This is what I can comment
por
to you right
conectarse, por
now.
escucharnos,
Thank you
por
for listening
escucharnos.
to us.
Siempre va a ser súper
It will
importante
be
hacer
very
estos
important. It's
ejercicios
always very important to do
de
such an
memoria
exercise
y
to not
ejercicios
for
de
to
coordinación.
keep our memories
Porque
alive and to
hoy en día
do
es
an exercise of
necesario
coordination because today it is
resistencia
necessary
y sobre todo desde el ámbito
to
cultural. Porque desde el
resist,
ámbito cultural
especially in the
como nos lo han
cultural
dicho, nos
uh,
tienen avasallando
the
a
cultural
familias.
sphere because
Y
they have been
sobre todo
exploiting
desde
us
este
for so long,
rinconcito que les digo que se llama Chile,
and
acá
in
nuestra
Chile,
lucha
our
es
struggle
por acabar
is
por ese fascismo, ese sionismo
to
explicarle a la gente
to crush
que no
this
solamente un afiche,
fascism and
no es solamente una
Zionism,
publicación en redes
because not
sociales,
just a
es un
publication
sentir.
on
Hay
the
hermanas y
social
hermanos que
networks,
lo dan
on social
todos.
media,
Yo quiero
there are
mostrarles,
brothers and
tengo acá
sisters who give it
un
all.
diseño,
I want to
una anilla,
show you what I
una
have here,
katana. La
which is
katana con mucho odio.
a drawing of a katana. A katana, the
Lo
katana, as
enforzamos
many others,
demasiado de poder sacar nuestro arte combativo, como le llamamos, un
has
arte
to
de memoria, un
do
arte de resistencia.
with
Y, y bueno, y
our
de eso tenemos
resistance,
mucha
our struggle.
experiencia, porque
And we have
combatimos una
lots of
dictadura,
experience
combatimos
because
a
we have
Pinochet,
been fighting
combatimos a
against
Piñera,
the
y hoy
dictator,
en día,
the dictatorship of
dentro de esa
Pinochet,
cultura,
and
es
also
necesario,
against
es
Piñera. In
justo
this
y necesario
culture, it
por
is
la verdad,
necessary
y siempre por la
to
verdad, estar en el lado
speak
correcto,
with the
por
truth. If we stand in the
la
correct
historia.
side of
Así
history,
que dejo la
we,
palabra
so
a
that,
Fin
that
y a los
is
demás
fundamental.
compañeros. Y un
So
saludo
I pass the floor,
a,
and I
a
want to greet
cada rincón, compañero. Y
all
quiero que sepamos una cosa, perdón, que no estamos
our
solos
comrades
en
that
nuestro planeta.
that came from
No
different
estamos
parts of
solos.
the world, and we are not
Estamos
alone. We have to
listos y
understand that
dispuestos para resistir y para hacer
we
lo que
are
sea necesario
have
para
the
combatir el sionismo
disposition
y el fascismo.
to
Así
resist
que
and
les
to do
dejo la
whatever
palabra abierta,
necessary
hermanos y hermanas.
to defend the
Gracias.
Palestinian nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I mean, I think it's important to bring your perspective to remind us that, you know, the struggles against the Zionist occupation and the genocide is also connected to more global struggles, whether it's around the fight against the military dictatorships from the era of Pinochet to the rise of the right wing across the world today. And it reminds me of a quote that's often quoted by Rasan Abu Apara, who said that imperialism has laid its body over the world, the head in Eastern Asia, the heart in the Middle East, and its arteries reaching Africa and Latin America. Wherever you strike it, you damage it, and you serve the world revolution. I think in that way, we have to remember that as we see what's unfolding in Palestine, that it is inextricably connected to the many struggles we see against imperialism, against colonialism, against fascism around the world. And so with that, I think we close off the first part, which is the speeches from our three guests. I'm going to invite you all to use the chat to share any questions or comments. I think what I'll do is I'll collect them in rounds and then give the floor back to the speakers. So please feel free to use that. You can write them in English, Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic, and we'll try to translate them. But to start us off, maybe I just wanted to ask a question. This is both for Bassem and Mohammed. Maybe Bassem can start first. I think both of you talked about writing and creating in extreme situations of duress. You know, writing in prison, you have to find hours, sneaking hours when the prison guards are not watching or they're sleeping in order to just write a few words. How to smuggle the paper out, you know, whether it's on the cigarette paper or, you know, ingested in people's bodies, etc. Similarly, Mohammed, you were making films like the Janine documentary days after, you know, that massacre, and that you were there on the ground, and also continuing to make films despite the huge persecution legally and politically. So I was hoping that you could both share a little bit about this process of creating and producing under such extreme difficulties, and maybe think about also share why you think this upsets the Israeli regime, the Zionist regime, so much that they go to such lengths to try to censor and erase and destroy these cultural products that you're making. So maybe Bassem, you can start first and then pass over to Mohammed for your comments. Thank you. Bassem, do you want to share some thoughts on that? And then we'll go to Mohammed.
Hola, perdón, ¿me pueden repetir? Me perdí.
اوكي. المستعمر السجان والمستعمر
Can
بكافة
you repeat the
تجلياته
question? I got lost.
وتمثيلاته أشد ما
The
يخشاه هو أن يمتلك الفلسطيني
colonizer or
سرديته وأن يمتلك الفلسطيني
the
القدرة على الحكي.
occupation forces has a huge fear, which is for Palestinians to talk about what they are suffering from. Because whenever Palestinians speak up, they undermine the Zionist structure. There are a number of procedures that or measures they utilize in order to muzzle us. I'm sorry, but the connection of Bassem. So the main purpose of all actions they do is to oppress Palestinians and prevent them from speaking up.
الحجارة في الانتفاضة الأولى قام الاستعتاب في مدينة الأغنية تهدد هذا المستعمر.
Even in the first uprising, there were a number of songs that were produced by the youth at that time, and that expressed the sufferance of the Palestinian people, but the people who developed those songs were targeted. I'm sorry, I think we lost Bassem.
I think we might have just lost Bassem. Let's see if he can connect back. And maybe in the meantime, Mohammed, do you want to share some comments? And then when Bassem gets back, we'll pass it back to him.
Sorry, رجعت أنا صح؟
Oh, Bassem is back. Okay, great. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I'm always back. So يعني عندما يقوم هذا المستعمر بقمع
When
الفلسطينيين
this
ومحاولة
colonizer oppresses Palestinians and try to muzzle them, they know that
بجميع الوسائل بات قادر على
Palestinians have different means in order to undermine the Zionist narrative. This is why they're deploying such measures. They are utilizing all actions and measures in order to oppress Palestinians and erase all human features of Palestinians. And once they do that, it is easy for them afterwards to neutralize Palestinians and even kill them. So from my perspective, the true resistance should happen at the cultural level, at the narrative level. The main story that should be conveyed is the narrative of Palestinians telling their stories, or the narrative of telling the story of Palestinians. The harm that has been inflicted to Palestinians since Nakba can be expressed through this narrative in order to expose the Zionist entity and to showcase that this story represents what sufferance and oppression the Palestinians have underwent by the Zionist entity. Thank you.
Thank you, Bassem. Mohammed, would you like to go ahead? I think you're still muted. I think you have to unmute first. Mohammed.
الآن
Can you
مسموع؟
hear me?
يقول محمود درويش في
Mahmoud Darwish,
قصائده الرائعة
in one of his great
على هذه
poems,
الأرض ما
says,
يستحق الحياة
on this land there is
وفي
something
فترة أخرى
worthy to
يقول
live for. And in another
وخوف
verse,
الطغاة من
he's saying,
الأغنيات
the tyrants
هم
and their
يخافون
fear
الغناء
of songs.
هم يخافون البسمة
They are afraid
هم
of
يخافون الحكاية
the
لذلك
songs, the
يحبسونها
smiles, the
ولا
stories.
زال
This is why they are
جنين
smothering these
ودخل
stories,
جنين
smiles, and
أيام
songs
أيام قليلة
before they are
بعد
even
السيل
born. I
الغاشم
went into Jenin after
دخلت
the
متسللا
Zionist invasion in 2002. I went sneaking in. I had a camera
على كفي
and
ومش
my life was on the line then.
بمننكم بهذا الكلام لا لا
This
لا
is not a
أنا
pejorative
خير
description.
من
No,
نصيبي أنا عملت الفيلم عشان أوصل رواية
it was true. I made the film because I wanted to convey the story of my Palestinian people who have been under siege for more than 70 years. My crime was that I gave the microphone to ordinary people. They're not heroes, they're not fighters, they're not
وليسوا سياسيين
suicide bombers, they're not
لا
politicians.
أقابل هؤلاء ليس لأني أقلل من قيمة كل من ذكرت
I intentionally chose ordinary people in order to narrate the story of Palestinians from their eyes, without editing, without embellishment, and without anything. This is why this was a source of grudge against me, because they didn't want people to learn the truth that the Zionist soldiers who went into Jenin are just murderers of children and innocent people. This is a testimony that was conveyed to the world, saying that those people, those Palestinians, deserve to live and not to die. This is why they censored the film, they fought it, and they are still fighting it until now. This is why I made a new film in 2024 called Jenin, or the fetus of Jenin, which is born out of the womb of the first movie, Jenin. I don't hate people, and I don't rob anybody, but if I am hungry, I shall eat the meat of my oppressor. Therefore, beware of my hunger and wrath. You should be careful. Stop. Finish what you're doing and get out of here. We are fed up. You've killed us. People passing.
هذا اللي حاولت أقوله بفيلم جنين وعملت كثير
Don't.
تنزيلات زي اللي بيعمل تنزيلات
You should beware. And this is the message that I wanted to convey in this second movie. I've included many of the crimes that were committed by the Zionist entity into Jenin, and the hope that the Israeli viewer, the Israeli audience, before the audience all over the world, see this and burst into tears. But this did not happen. They did not see this movie because they didn't give me the opportunity to show it to the Israeli people. They censored it. But I'm here. Time is in my hand, or I have all the time in the world in my hand.
خلصت كلام.
That's it.
Very powerful intervention. I'm going to share some of the questions from our audience here. We have about, I think, ranging between 70 and 80 people that have been joining us in this webinar, as well as people watching on the live streams. So I'm going to group together some questions. There are 3 questions for Bassem, so I will say them all, and then you can give us your answers. The first one is wondering if, first of all, congratulating you on your safe return, and wondering if you're going to work on a novel or possibly for a film or play about prisoners and experience in the prison. The second question is asking about how you were able to keep current about current situations inside the prison. How did you manage to stay up to date inside? And then the third question is a longer one, basically responding to what you were saying about humanizing Israeli soldiers so that we can defeat them and to break this terrifying aura around them, and saying that Gaza has already shattered this image for many people. At the same time, we've seen that Arab media has consistently also helped the Zionists to spread some of that fear amongst Palestinians. So the question is, how can this overwhelming Israeli military dominance be confronted through popular resistance, taking into consideration their capabilities? In addition to the boycott, don't we also need to create awareness? So I'll pass on to Bassem, and then I'll go for a second round of questions.
طيب أولا الكتابة عن الأسرى داخل السجون يعني
writing about prisoners within Palestinian captives and prisoners in Israeli prisons is my duty. There are prisoners who are still in Israeli prisons now who are suffering, who are being bits by bits exterminated, and that is the manifestation of the Zionist brutality. I didn't write about my experience or our experience in the prison because there is no critical distance that allow me to develop something that it is comprehensive. But today I have a project of a comprehensive document about Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons. I am intending to write a novel on my friend Walid who died in Israeli prison and who is still whose dead body is still being held captive in the morgues of the Israeli Zionist entities. I've started, or this idea started brewing in my mind when I was in prison. I couldn't start writing because everything was confiscated, the paper, the pens that allow us to write that, but they couldn't confiscate our imagination, our minds, and I was able to develop this novel on Walid while I was in the prison, but I am waiting for the right moment, in spite of the fact that I'm in exile, but I'm waiting for the right moment to draw this down or jot this down. Second question, the reality of prisoners is very bad. A month and a half ago, I was thrown in a cell, suffering from cold, diseases, and everything. And now today, I am in exile. I'm still living, but I'm still resisting also. The exile has its own discrepancies. It might be a wide space for me, but I'm still struggling to adapt to my new situation. I am not accustomed to write while I feel comfortable. I am used to write under uncomfortable circumstances. I'm accustomed to do that. When we live in peril, we value more the words that we write and come out from our minds and imagination. When I was in captivity and when I was beaten and when I was subject to psychological torture and torment and I was suffering, I said, it is impossible that it is impossible to see myself doing what my imprisoner is doing. I just want also to clarify one point when we talk about humanizing the other Zionist or the enemy. We cannot beat the dragon if we see it as a dragon. We cannot tame a dinosaur if we deal with it as a dinosaur. So we've dealt with the Zionist enemy in our literature as an enemy that cannot be vanquished. But if we strip down that image and show them just as a human, then we will realize that we can beat them. That's why that's what I meant when I said humanize that. We need to deconstruct this stereotype of an enemy that we cannot vanquish to make it just a person that we can vanquish, an enemy that we can vanquish. And this is what I mean when I said to humanize the Zionists. This is what we need also to understand is what made those individuals become the jailers, become the tyrants or oppressors of Palestinians. What made them do that? Because when I see myself, I would never see myself doing the same as they are doing to the Palestinians. And this is why we're trying to showcase that we haven't been born to become murderers or killers or to be persecuted. I am an individual, a human being that does not deserve to be killed by that Zionist individual. So in this literature, we focus on two pathways. First, how to reclaim our humanity as Palestinians, because what happened in Gaza cannot be described sufficiently. People are mentioning genocide as a way to reconcile with themselves. When a person says what is happening in Gaza is a genocide, they can reconcile with their emotions. But what is happening in Gaza is beyond that. We need to understand that there are different levels of representation of the destruction that is happening in Gaza, that happened and is happening in Gaza. So this destruction is intensive and after 48, when we in the Nakba we went into a dark tunnel, but in the 68 there was a glimpse of hope through the resistance. And in the uprising also we went out of that bleak tunnel that we've engaged in after 76, and today this is the third bleak tunnel that we are in through the destruction that is happening in Gaza, and there is a glimpse of light that will come out of that afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I think we have some time for 2 or 3 more rounds of questions. There was one, I think, broader question. I think it can be taken by any of our speakers. It's a question from the African perspective. Emmanuel here said that many Africans show deep solidarity with Palestinians, but I'm often asked by people who are not fully engaged ideologically, why don't we see Palestinians showing the same levels of solidarity towards African struggles? For example, we see many Congolese people standing firmly with Palestine, yet we rarely see Palestinians openly supporting the anti-imperialist struggles happening in places like the Congo and Sudan. So this raises an important question about mutual solidarity and why the support seems one-sided when African nations see themselves also as suffering ongoing exploitation and conflict driven by global imperial interests. So I think that can be an open question if anyone wants to answer. Bassem, Mohammed, or Rasan, you can take it.
يعني خلي الأستاذ محمد يتفضل يجاوب، يعني أنا بعطيه المجال.
الأستاذ
Maybe
صديقنا تشيلي لأنه
Comrade
ما حكاش ولا
Mohammed or our
ما
comrade Rasan from Chile.
Tings, maybe our fellow, our comrade from Chile, he can answer.
Sure. Yes, I think he wants to say he just needs to turn on, he's on multiple devices, I can see.
خلاص بصالح أنت كمل احكي من عندك خلاص.
هيك يعني.
Comrade Mohammed, you can answer the question.
أنا أقبل هذا الانتقاد اللي وصلني الآن من إنسان إفريقي اللي يعاني ليس أقل.
Criticism is acceptable
ويمكن
as
مرات الوجع الكبير.
Many African countries are suffering like Palestine. Sometimes a great torment would make us sink into our sorrows and pain and overlook sometimes
مع كل المظلومين في كل العالم سواء كان في إفريقيا
the sufferings of others, but this does not exclude the fact that they are equally suffering like Palestinians.
يعني شوف أنا باعتقادي أنا يعني سأستكمل
To continue on what Comrade Mohammed was saying,
بالفعل نحن كشعب فلسطيني تعودنا.
It is true, as a Palestinian people, we are accustomed to be at the platform of solidarity, and that all the world needs to show solidarity with us. And maybe today we have an opportunity through this cultural front and through the confrontation literature to showcase that struggles in many African countries also represent the struggles of Palestinians, and because the Palestinian struggle now is cosmopolitan, and this is why we're enlightening the Palestinian people on this fact that there are other struggles that are happening in many other countries, and this is the image that we're trying to convey and to our people. I believe Comrade Rasan wants to speak.
Sí, vuelvo a saludar a cada uno y digo, bueno,
I agree to you all again. Yes, comrades.
Concuerdo con cada exponencia que dice
I agree with everything our comrade said.
pero creo y siento
What I think and I
aprovechando
feel
el momento de la
taking
virtualidad
advantage of this
de la
virtual moment
internacionalidad en que
of
nos
the
encontramos
internationality where we meet in,
de encontrar un mínimo común
that
más
we
allá
find
de
a
lo que
common
sea la lucha por
minimum
Palestina,
beyond the
es
struggle
la
for
lucha
Palestine.
contra
It's
el
the
modelo,
struggle
es la
against the
lucha
model, the
antiimperialista.
struggle, the
Entonces, en esta lucha
anti-imperialist struggle.
imperialista, tal vez aprovechando
Maybe
nuestra internacionalidad,
taking advantage of
tal vez
our
de llegar
internationality
a algo, ¿cachai?
to get to
Llegar a algo que se
something,
entienda, lo que diga, ¿cachai? Llegar a algo que, por ejemplo,
for
digamos
example,
que este 25 de diciembre nos vamos a
that
movilizar
December
todas y todos,
25, we need to
no
mobilize
solamente por Palestina,
everyone,
nos vamos
not
a
just for
movilizar por
Palestine,
cada
to
pueblo
mobilize
libre, por
for
cada niño,
every
niña,
people,
niñe
each
asesinado.
child
Por
murdered.
ejemplo, como les
For
decía,
example,
acá
as
en
I said,
Chile,
here in
dentro
Chile,
de la comunidad palestina que tenemos,
in the Palestinian
existe el
community
mundo
where
del
we live in,
Web,
there
el
is the
mundo mapuche,
road
el
of
pueblo
the
originario,
Webmapo, the
que es el
Mapuche, the
pueblo
original people,
que muchos le decimos puede ser el
that many
segundo
people
Palestina, el
say that
segundo
can be the
o el segundo Gaza, porque con la
second
irrupción
Gaza
del
because of the
sionismo
eruption
en la
of the Sionismo
Patagonia
in
chilena,
Patagonia, in the
argentina,
Chilean
¿qué es lo que
Patagonia,
van a
Chilean
querer hacer
Argentinian Patagonia.
estos fascistas sionistas?
What will
Nos van
this
a querer
fascists
ocupar,
will
van
do?
a querer hacer lo mismo que
They
hicieron con Gaza.
they don't want to
Entonces,
occupy. They will do the
lo
same they're doing with
importante
Gaza.
de que
So the
nos
importance
encontremos, nos
that we
escuchemos,
meet to
nos
listen
veamos,
to each other
una,
and
es
see
apoyarnos en nuestras
and to
causas, en nuestras
support
colectividades,
ourselves in our
pero
collective
pensemos,
struggles.
en
But
ser
we should
audaces, pensemos
think,
grandes, compañeros.
we need to think
Pensemos que
big.
tenemos una revolución por delante,
So we have a
de
revolution ahead
que
of us.
no nos van a socavar por más
That they are
presión que
not going to
tengan,
drown us with all the pressure they might
por todas las
have,
tecnologías, por mil
with all the
miserias, como
technology,
acá decimos los comunistas acá en Chile.
as we say here, the communists here in
Los
Chile,
comunistas somos maleza,
the communists,
la
we
pueden
are
sacar
like
mil veces,
weeds. They
pero
can
vamos a seguir
try to
saliendo.
eradicate us,
Entonces,
but we will
comportarnos
insist in
y ser
coming out.
maleza,
So
pese que
we
nos corten, vamos a
let's
seguir saliendo.
make our
Y
effort
tal
in
vez
being weeds. We'll
dentro
continue to
de esta
grow.
reunión podemos,
So inside this
y lo dejo acá en
meeting,
la mesa,
and I leave it
sacar
over on the
con,
table
y
here.
tal vez con todas las dificultades,
Maybe with all the
sean
difficulties we
locales,
have local,
a lo mejor localmente no va a poder salir,
or maybe
pero
locally,
sacar una voz, ser un
to
grito
raise
mundial
a
ahora
voice,
en
a
diciembre
world cry now in December
contra el sionismo,
against
combatir
Zionism,
la narrativa de
to share the
deshumanización
narrative of
contra el pueblo árabe, contra el
dehumanization
pueblo palestino,
against the
contra el pueblo
Arab
africano,
people, the
contra el
African
pueblo
people,
latinoamericano,
Palestinian people,
contra todos los
Latin
pueblos
America people,
que son
against
oprimidos,
all the
que nos quieren
peoples that
socavar
are
contra el
oppressed,
imperialismo.
against the imperialism.
Y eso, compañeras, compañeros.
And that's it,
No sé si le respondí bien
comrades.
la pregunta, pero
I'm not sure if I answered the question,
se imaginé que tal vez puede
but
ser
so
el
just
momento
imagine that it could be a
plantearlo
moment
acá a las camaradas.
of saying this,
Dejo la
comrades.
palabra.
I leave you the floor.
Thank you. Very important words. So we're wrapping up, nearing the end of our 2 hours here. There is a question that was originally for Bassem, but I think it can be expanded to all three of you, and you could also include it in your closing remarks. And that's basically how you manage to preserve your own humanity, your own mental strength, and your ability to create. Initially, it was in the brutality of prison, but in the brutality of the situations that you find yourself, whether it's thinking about the rise of fascism in Chile, to the Zionist oppression in living in the territories known as Israel. So what gives you that? And maybe you can, with that, each of you can take a few minutes to share your closing remarks, anything you want to share with everyone here today. We'll start in the order that we presented, starting with Bassem, and then Mohammed, then Rasan.
يعني
Bassem, if you
بالتأكيد
want to
أنا
give your
أحافظ. Yeah, do you hear me now? Okay. بالطبع أنا أحافظ على إنسانيتي ولا أحافظ عليها فقط، أنا أحاول أن أستعيدها
Of
أيضا.
course, it's not a matter of preserving humanity, it's reclaiming it. After 22 years of imprisonment, I'm trying to regain my humanity through writing, because the whole colonial system is based on a specific idea that they are trying to indoctrinate to the prisoners, and through the Zionist mindset they're trying to alter the resistance and struggle mindset into the mindset of the vanquished, and embedded into the identity of the Palestinian. This is why, as a writer, as an intellect, I'm trying to write to preserve my humanity and also contribute into the development of a new Palestinian critical narrative. I can reclaim my humanity through supporting the struggles of other peoples in the world and combating oppression in the world. There are other types of colonization that are cruel, like the cruelty of the Zionist occupation. Look at Venezuela and the oppression that they are under due to the savage capitalism attacks and the objectives they want to achieve in Venezuela, and the other struggles that are happening all over the world. All of these struggles are against the savage capitalism. This is how we can reclaim, retrieve our humanity. And as a writer, we can only achieve this through writing and through inspiring from the writings of others who are combating savagery and oppression. And this is at the heart of the resistance. As Palestinians, as I said, we need a new cultural narrative that will become a reference for us and that will guide us into our different creative cultural manifestations. Thank you. Jesus answered this question many centuries ago. Jesus said, God, forgive them. They do not understand what they're doing. He said also, love your enemies. No, I don't love my enemies, but I will never let them fill me in with their grudge and hatred. I will remain a loving person. I will recommend this to my children. Do not lose the smile and smile when you need to tear up or cry. I will try to unleash my rage against my enemies by creating films filled with love. You asked me about Janine, which is one of my movies, not the most important of them, but it tells a story of love, the story of a human loving a human and a human loving their homeland. Love your children, love your neighbors, and release that anger in your creativity. This is the equation. Thank you.
Thank you. Pass for the final words from Rasan. Go ahead.
Sí. Tal vez para
Maybe just to
complementar
complement
esta
or
conversación
to say
y este sentir
round up
que
this
tenemos
conversation and this feeling
a
that we
nivel
are sharing
mundial,
at all over the world.
hay,
There
o
were
hubo,
and there are
tuvimos un gran cantautor
a great singer
llamado Víctor Jara.
and author called Víctor Jara.
Cantó y nos escribió
Víctor Jara
tal vez la
sang
canción
and
más
wrote
hermosa
the most beautiful song
para estos tiempos, que se llama
for
El derecho de vivir en paz.
for these times. It's called The Right to Live in Peace,
Solamente les voy a decir que es el
and
canto universal,
is
cadena
a universal
que
song.
hará triunfar el derecho de vivir en paz,
What
el
will
derecho de
make us
vivir en paz.
succeed? The
Y
right
voy a
to live in peace.
remarcarlo, el
And I want
derecho de
to
vivir
say
en
that
paz.
again. The right to live in
Esa es
peace.
nuestra resistencia.
This is our
Eso es por
resistance.
lo que anhelamos.
That
Eso es
is
lo que vamos a
why
seguir construyendo.
that's what we want. This is what we will still keep on building,
pese a
despite
todo
all
medio
fascist
de
governments,
desinformación. Las y
despite
los
misinformation.
creativos vamos a estar
The peoples will
trabajando.
be working.
No estamos solos, compañeros.
We are not alone,
compañeros.
comrades.
Tal vez nos vamos a
Maybe
encontrar
we
con
will
los
meet
compañeros que estuvieron presos
as
y
these
también hemos
comrades of
tenido
us
acá en
that
Chile,
were in
en
prison,
Latinoamérica. Pero no estamos
and
solos,
came out.
ni
But we are
solas,
not
ni soles.
alone,
Hay que luchar
nor men, neither
persistir
women. We
y
have
conspirar
to
contra
struggle,
este enemigo.
persist, and conspire against our
Eso,
enemies.
compañero.
This is it.
El derecho de vivir en paz. A
The
cada
right
uno
to
y a
live
cada
in
una.
peace for each one of you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Dale.
Thank you. Thank you. I think on behalf of everyone who's participating here and listening in, it was such a beautiful 2 hours to spend together. So thank you, Bassem, Mohammed, and Rasan for sharing your work, your stories, and your insights today. I think they're really some of the key themes we were trying to bring forward by producing this dossier, despite everything, cultural resistance for a free Palestine. And I think there are 3 points we were trying to highlight and that came up in here. And one of them is that culture helps remember and reclaim not only the land, but also humanity. Bassem was talking about the writing as a part of this reclamation of humanity. Second important point is how culture witnesses, not only to record atrocities, like, for example, a documentary like Janine Janine we talked a lot about can do, but also to transform consciousness. Third is that the culture imagines. It imagines a future that is still not thinkable, not imaginable. Imagines a future that is not yet born, one that is also internationalist. And I think that's the angle that Rasan was bringing today. That was a very important one, because we know that this cultural work is not the responsibility of just Palestinians alone, but of all of us. And I think that's what brings us together here today. But of course, we also know that culture alone or cultural work alone cannot liberate Palestine, cannot liberate any nation or people. There's no amount of poems or films, posters that can substitute political struggle, the importance of building people's power and confronting imperialism materially wherever we see its head reared, as Ghassan Kanafani told us wisely many years ago. But even still, culture is necessary. And I think some of the things I heard today, we must create in order not to die, but we also must create in order to live on. So let's leave that as our kind of final message of inspiration and hope, despite everything. And I want to thank you all for being here today, of course, to the speakers, to our interpreters. To do this in 4 languages is not easy. Internationalism is real work. To the media teams, the tech team, of course, to everyone who's participating in the webinar and also watching our live stream. I want to encourage everyone to read, share, study the dossier that can be found on our website at the tricontinental.org in all of the languages here. And also do look at the posters from Utopics to Artists Against Apartheid that contributed to this dossier, but they have hundreds more online. They're made to be used to be downloaded, to be printed, to be put on the streets and shared. So please do that. And I'll just sign off. Thank you very much. Again, I'm Tings from the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research. We're going to sign off with one song called The Anthem of the Intifada by Marcel Khalif, which is based on a poem by the Palestinian communist poet and freedom fighter Ma'in Beseso. So with that, thank you very much and have a good day, good evening, and good night.
نعم لن نموت ولكننا سنقتلع الموت من أرضنا. نعم لن نموت ولكننا سنقتلع القمع من أرضنا. هناك بعيدا بعيد سيحملني يا رفيق الجنود. هناك بعيدا بعيد سيحملني يا رفيق الجنود. سيلقون بي في الظلام الرهيب، سيلقون بي في جحيم القيود. نعم لن نموت ولكننا سنقتلع الموت من أرضنا. نعم لن نموت ولكننا سنقتلع القمع من أرضنا. لقد فتشوا غرفتي يا أخي فما وجدوا غير بعض الكتب. لقد فتشوا غرفتي يا أخي فما وجدوا غير بعض الكتب. وأكوام عظم هم إخوتي يئنون ما بين أم وأب. وأكوام عظم هم إخوتي يئنون ما بين أم وأب. لقد أيقظوهم بركلاتهم، لقد أشعلوا في العيون الغضب. نعم لن نموت، نعم لن نموت، نعم لن نموت، نعم لن نموت. أنا الآن بين جنود الطغاة، أنا الآن أسحب للمعتقل. أنا الآن بين جنود الطغاة، أنا الآن أسحب للمعتقل. وما زال وجه أبي ماثلا أمامي يسلحني بالأمل. وأمي تئن أنينا طويلا ومن حولها إخوتي يصرخون. ومن حولهم بعض جيراننا وكل له ولد في السجون. ومن حولهم بعض جيراننا وكل له ولد في السجون. ولكنني رغم بطش الجنود رفعت يدا أثقلتها القيود. وقلت لهم أنني عائد بجيش الرفاق، بجيش الرعود، بجيش الرفاق، بجيش الرعود. هناك راملا في الطريق قائد الثورة المنتصر. هناك أرى عاملا في الطريق، أرى قائد الثورة المنتصر يلوح لي بيد من حديد، وأخرى تطاير منها الشرر. أنا الآن بين مئات الرفاق، أضم لقبضاتهم قبضتي. أنا الآن أشعر أني قوي، وأني سأهزم زنزانتي. نعم لن نموت، نعم سوف نحيا، ولو أكل القيد من عظمنا، ولو مزقتنا سياط الطغاة، ولو أشعلوا النار في جسمنا. نعم لن نموت، 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 نعم لن نموت.
Thank you very much. Take good care.
Thank you, Tings.
Thank you, thanks.
Thank you, Arwa.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Tings.
everybody. Thank you, Bassem. Thank you.
سلامات بصالح، حييك، حي نفسك.
Muchas gracias, saludos a Sin, a Mohammed, Dan, a todos, a los que se han conectado. Viva Palestina libre, viva los pueblos que luchan, hasta la victoria siempre.
Venceremos.
Venceremos.
Shukran.
También un saludo al Instituto Tricontinental, que hace posible el levantamiento de información, al colectivo Utopics, que hace a cada artista. Yo soy un solo artista del colectivo Utopic, pero en el colectivo Utopic habemos muchas y muchos y muchas haciendo un mundo posible en una lucha, conspirando contra el enemigo. Un saludo a cada artista que hace posible esa lucha, a cada autor, a cada cineasta, a cada novelista, a cada deportista, a todo el mundo que lucha. Un abrazo fraterno, porque venceremos. Los más sencillos, venceremos.
Venceremos. Gracias, shukran. Thank you. Obrigada.
Más salama.
Chao, compas. Gracias.
Chao, chao.
Abrazos.
Gracias, Flo.
Chao, chao.
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 Arwa, thank
Nos
you.
veremos.
Arwa.
Nos veremos, por favor. Cuídense. Amor, mucho amor.